just thinking back to a few years ago when I tried to non-confrontationally come out by saying I had a huge crush on Kristen Bell, my entire family decided I must have said Christian Bale instead. I was grocery shopping today, and the old lady stopped me to compliment me on how well my kids were wearing their masks. We chatted for a bit, and she said, "My friends always ask why I never got married or had kids, and I tell them, Susan and I have been housemates for 45 years. Wife and I kiss each other in the cereal aisle at the local supermarket while holding hands. Roger's salesperson walks up to us, greets us, and asks, 'Are you close friends?' I almost said no, we're sisters. St. James woman gets kidney from girlfriend. Now that's friendship. Me and my fiancé have been together 2 years and living together for 1 year and 9 months, and we are getting married in less than a year. Today we found out one of her family members had thought this whole time that we were just close friends, that I had moved 300 miles to find a job up here so we could share a house, and she was happy we maintained a friendship this long. We even sent her a wedding invite, and she thought it was a friendship wedding. We are the ultimate gal pals." These are just a few of many posts on the subreddit r/SapphoAndHerFriend. The description is as follows: a sub dedicated to historical and other LGBTQ erasure from academia and other spaces, mostly humorous but open to serious discussion as well. This title is tongue-in-cheek. It is intended to mimic and mock situations in which straight people misidentify obvious, romantic, queer relationships as close friendships. This particular joke being that Sappho, who by another poster is dubbed the OG lesbian, is actually just close friends with another woman who is clearly her lover. This title gives new users a good idea of the type of posts they may see here. While this subreddit initially seems to be a collection of mostly sapphics or women who love women making jokes and poking fun at straight people being oblivious, I believe this subreddit is a showcase of symptoms of a larger issue: the pervasiveness of heteronormativity, and its hand in making it more difficult for queer people to navigate relationships, the erasure of said queer relationships, and ultimately its reinforcement of strict roles and labels that may do more harm than good for all romantic and platonic relationships. So let's start with a simple question. What is heteronormativity? According to the American Psychological Association, heteronormativity is the assumption that heterosexuality is standard, normal sexual behavior, and that gender roles are natural and essential in normal human relations. Heterosexism is prejudice against LGBTQ+ people based on the belief of heteronormativity. Heteronormativity is a more specific term than homophobia, which implies more generally an anxiety or fear of interacting with gay people, as opposed to an assumption that being gay is unnatural. They do tend to go hand in hand, so this may seem like an arbitrary distinction, but in this case, a distinction is important in order to gain a more specific and complete understanding of this conversation. Here is a photo of Kelly O'Hara, an American soccer player, kissing her girlfriend who is in the stands after winning a World Cup. This user instead says she is greeting a fan. There are 2 women kissing on the screen right now. This woman saw it and said, "It's probably just her being friendly and greeting a fan," which I would say is a considerable leap in logic. Here's a headline where an author takes a very clear quote saying, "I'm sure I'm bisexual," and casts doubt by claiming that the quote is a hint and that Simpson merely thinks she might be bisexual. This doubt casted on even blatant statements of people coming out as LGBTQ+ is a way we as a society perpetuate the idea of heteronormativity. The very fact that queer people have to come out is another example of straightness being upheld as a natural default. It is entirely possible that these headlines were crafted with malicious intent, but it is also very possible they were just reflections of very limited worldviews, views that need to be challenged by learning about and acknowledging the existence of queer people. Learning about queer history is difficult due to the need to be discreet and closeted for many queer folks to survive, but it is made considerably more difficult due to academic erasure. With this in mind, here are 2 posts from the subreddit with the academic erasure flair. 2 women physicians lived together, traveled together, and never married. They are buried next to each other as medical classmates. This poster also mentions that they haven't seen this story discussed much and wanted to bring it light with the hashtag #MoreThanClassmates. Here is a second image, a screenshot of an article from The Guardian dated 2 years ago. Lovers of Modena skeletons holding hands were both men. Researchers believe the pair might have been siblings, cousins, or soldiers who died together. When you scroll through the comments of the Reddit post, you can find a link to the article and read further. The discovery of two individuals buried hand in hand or even embracing is nothing new. Many tombs have been found in the past with couples holding hands, but in all cases there was a man and a woman. What might have been the bond between the two individuals in the burial in Modena remains a mystery. So two women never married, lived together, and requested they be buried together, and they were without a doubt just two besties. Two men were buried together, holding hands, alongside other pairs of presumed heterosexual couples, but their bond remains a mystery. The possibility that they were queer is not even mentioned. What these two cases have in common is that there is a distinct and likely possibility that the information presented is a part, however small, of queer history that is valuable. Irrefutable evidence of queerness existing throughout time is proof that queer people are also natural, and that specific gender roles and heterosexuality is not the only way we have to live as dictated by biology or God. This is direct evidence opposing heteronormativity and heterosexism. What can be drawn from the articles and posts discussed is that heteronormativity plays a significant role in queer erasure, whether that erasure is casual, academic, historical, or otherwise. This is something the subreddit satirizes through various memes and jokes as a way of venting frustration at the very real issue of erasure. There are a few key phrases used as in-jokes, like "they were roommates," which is also a reference to a Vine.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
And calling sapphic couples gal pals. SOS, I told the girl I like I want a butch girlfriend, and she said I'm butch, and I got really flustered and went to go make dinner for us, because I'm at her place tonight. Are you sure y'all aren't on a date right now? Hi, yes, you were right, I was on a date. Know how I found out? I was downstairs cooking dinner, and she came up from behind me and wrapped her arms around me and kissed the back of my neck, and when I flushed bright red, she asked me why, and then laughed when I said I had a crush on her because she thought this was like our 5th date, but I was just taking it slow. All too often, queer women in relationships with other women hear the question, so who's the man in the relationship? I had a friend who used to say, neither of us, that's kind of the point. And yes, that is the point of not dating men. But what does that question really mean, and why is it so common? When we think of a typical relationship, we tend to think of a straight couple. We've been socialized to believe that the man is the aggressor, or the one who makes the move, on women. Men are supposed to be more sexually dominant, they're supposed to be less emotionally vulnerable, they're supposed to be strong. They're the ones expected to propose. These expectations mean straight women are bystanders in their own relationships, and if they take charge in any of these ways, they risk being othered as too aggressive, or being called a slut, or even emasculating or insulting the man they want to be with. These expectations are slowly changing, but they've still been ingrained in most of us. These beliefs hurt straight men and straight women, may set up unhealthy and toxic dynamics and expectations in those relationships, but they also make it hard for sapphics to navigate their relationships. So, back to the post I read at the start of this section, it seems like a common experience, this misreading of if a woman is romantically interested or not. The idea that you need a man for a relationship to function, and the lack of representation and visibility for queer people, means that a lot of sapphics have trouble navigating relationships with other women, especially given how physically affectionate platonic relationships between women can get. One of the strangest and most challenging parts of being a lesbian for me has luckily not been a fear for my life or losing my loved ones. I'm lucky to have family that made it very clear that being gay would not make them love me any less, long before the thought that I was gay ever crossed any of our minds. What has been difficult, though, was truly understanding the possibility and what it would mean to be in a relationship with a woman. Visibility is so important for this reason. Seeing relationships of different kinds has helped me understand who I am and what kind of future I want for myself. While reading about the impacts of heteronormativity on sapphic relationships, I came across a study. This study has some lesbian couples explaining and comparing their relationship landmarks to those of straight couples. They discuss moving in together, exchanging rings, and other signs of commitment. They further discussed exchanging rings as a way to publicly show their commitment to each other, but also as a private, hidden thing due to the inability to be out. Some couples also explain how living in a one-bedroom living space was a way to non-verbally come out to those who visit, while others explained they had a second bedroom in order to keep up the front that they're just roommates. Landmarks like these exist under the assumption that you are a straight, monogamous couple, because the secrecy required for some queer folks to survive is not accounted for. This, at least for me, raises the question of if queer relationships conforming to traditional relationship structures set by straight people is wise or even possible. A popular form of advocacy was the movement to say love is love. This was to make a point of saying that queer people are just like straight people. This message, though it has helped lead to drastic improvements and changes in the United States, may have been an oversimplification that could end up further marginalizing the more vulnerable members of the community. In another study titled Heteronormativity and Homonormativity as Practical and Moral Resources, the Case of Lesbian and Gay Elders, a mouthful I know, author Dana Rosenfeld analyzes 28 interviews, 14 with gay men and 14 with lesbian women, of people aged 64 to 89. Many of the people interviewed expressed that they would not only actively avoid partaking in any non-normative expression of gender, but also shame others for doing so in order to pass as straight. One woman calls butch women stupid, another shaming gender nonconforming folks for flaunting their sexuality when they know it could put them in danger. They saw this defiance as actively putting a target on their own backs, and ultimately damaging the movement towards accepting queer folks. They aren't wrong in believing that non-normative expression of gender leads to more harassment, even for straight and cisgender individuals, but the way they condemn gender nonconforming queer folks sounds a lot like what homophobes say to and about the community, regardless of gender expression. The author puts it this way: here, gay liberation's construction of passing as personally and politically damaging is flipped. The failure or refusal to pass and the celebration of this refusal damages gay individuals and the gay collective. In this way, homonormativity is just an evolution of heteronormativity, expanding its influence to demand as much conformity out of queer people as possible. But if homophobes want to deny gay people rights, the community is not going to be better off siding with those in power to get a little bit of protection. Bigots will tolerate normal queer people as long as it benefits them too. Once the crazy ones are shamed back into silence, they'll stop pretending to accept what they view as the less deviant queerness. The ultimate goal for the queer community should not be the assimilation of queer people into already existing structures of relationships and gender, but the deconstruction of those structures in order to allow for more than one socially accepted way to have a relationship or express yourself. Given that queerness alone has already challenged the definition of romantic relationships almost irreparably, what are some other expectations that can be challenged? What are other ways we can push the boundaries of what we consider to be normal relationships? There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting more than one sexual or romantic partner. Monogamy is seen as the default in American culture, but polygamy is a setup that works for plenty of people, and we shouldn't shame others for experiencing relationships in a different way. That's just one possible type that is often ignored. Asexuality, aromanticism, and that whole spectrum has led to the reconstruction of relationships as well. It's a radical idea that a relationship doesn't have to be two partners who are both romantically and sexually involved with each other, and only each other. The possibility that you could just not want one or either of those things in life has largely been ignored when discussing relationships. In fact, while researching and reconsidering relationships, I found an article titled, "Do You Need to Be in a Relationship to Be Happy?" There seems to be an understanding that to be considered happy and successful, you need to be married, but the framing of finding a partner as an ultimate goal is wrong, according to the two studies cited, because the link between marriage and happiness is non-existent. What's important is not having a relationship, but having people in your life you trust that can support you. So as an alternative to traditional relationships, the aro/ace community has popularized a new term, queer platonic relationships. Defined loosely as a committed relationship that does not fall into the strict binary of platonic or romantic, it is a way that a lot of people, not just from the queer community, are beginning to redefine relationships in their lives. Queer platonic relationships purposefully blur the lines of platonic and romantic relationships. This way, people can find the commitment and strong bond with another person without all of the very specific and traditional expectations or demands. Can we talk about the beauty of queer platonic relationships in altruist attraction, or of polyamorous relationships, or T for T relationships, just love outside of the predetermined norm society sets out for us? The joy and comfort that comes from them, the trust and safety of having people who care for you, and knowing that it isn't in the traditional sense, but that it's still just as wonderful and loving. This post puts it simply, love does not have to come in the single form you decided it should. The subreddit r/SapphoAndHerFriend is about queer erasure, but I believe it branches out and ends up collecting examples of the effects heteronormativity has on the way straight and queer people view relationships. Gender roles alongside heteronormativity have limited the way society considers intimacy. The strict lines we draw with labels can be helpful for some, but can hinder many others by making it seem that anyone who wants something more, less, or just different in their romantic and/or sexual relationships is wrong or broken in some way. I'm not here to try to convince everyone to run off and form a polycule with their friend groups or anything along those lines. I just wanted to consider how our current understanding of what a successful relationship looks like has been detrimental to me in the long run, both as a lesbian and just as a person who loves and is loved by my friends and family. This model of relationship is considered the standard for a reason, several reasons I didn't get into in this video, but that reason is not because heterosexuality and monogamy are the natural instincts of humanity and anyone who falls outside of that is unholy and unnatural. Consider what you have to gain and lose from following this standard, and consider ignoring it if that's what would make you happy. Maybe not everything we've seen modeled growing up is the perfect and only healthy and happy way to live. As long as you communicate your expectations clearly with your friends and partner or partners, and whatever your relationship looks like is consensual, that is informed, continuous, enthusiastic, and uncoerced consent for all parties involved, then letting go of some of the expectations placed on relationships can be really freeing. Limiting the expression of such a universal feeling is uselessly restrictive and ultimately detrimental. Regardless of your gender and your sexual or romantic orientations, love outside of the heteronormative, monogamous, and strictly defined forms set out for us can be just as fulfilling and wonderful.